Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to Let's Play Chroma Squad. I'm your host, the Ronin of Dreams, and I hope to invite you to join me on this trip through the tokusatsu universe-inspired tactical RPG. Now, Chroma Squad has a little bit of also a strategic element in the game, and takes advantage of all of the rich history of tokusatsu over in Japan, in addition to all the primary Mighty Morphin Power Rangers influences. As you can see on the title, it is legitimately inspired by Spawn's Power Rangers, and that actually had some of the legal issues involved in creating this game. In fact, this game wouldn't have been able to come out without that tagline within the title itself. You can also enjoy the really nicely done opening credits music right here. It's actually kind of fantastic, one of my best parts of the game, just booting it up. You kind of get caught into it, like some of the jazzier titles from various tokusatsu shows. As for this LP, we'll be getting into it on the medium difficulty mode because I want to show off about as much as possible. So, here we go. The game's plot is significant enough to help suck you in, and as you can see, they do a fair bit with their low-key art style. And we're going to be introduced to, we're being introduced to the setting because the game starts you off in a tutorial mode, and the tutorial mode is literally in the process of recording another episode for Super Rangers, which is the outfit that the characters originally start on. And get used to minions hopping in from all sorts of areas because they'll be doing that throughout the entire game. As you can see, we have some complaints, but that's partly because, well, how do we get from here to running our own studio? The game actually accounts for that rather than being complete noobs. We also have a complete dick as a director, so, you know, if he wasn't already named Dr. Soap, I might call him, well, J Star. But we're getting introduced to some of the mechanics here in this first, in the tutorial area fights, including director's instructions and the audience bar. Now, you don't have to follow the director's instructions throughout the game. There are a couple instances where I accidentally screwed up. There are some that are legitimately difficult to perform, and there are times when you realize you don't really need it, and that's usually later on in the game. But you can also see the audience bar at the top of the screen. Now, every episode you record, and we'll get to that in a bit, has a maximum value for that. But the audience bar also will determine when you can transform. We'll see that in episode 1, which I'm covering in this introductory video. After this enforced tutorial segment. But different activities you do will influence the audience meter, and depending on who is doing them, depends on whether or not you get more or less value out of them. Certain characters will get a little bit for just moving around, but most characters are going to need a passive skill from their class to really give you a lot of free audience. You can see also, I've already started doing team attacks. They're a good way of getting a little extra audience early on. Not to mention, team attacks will also improve your damage output in the game. I don't have the formula offhand right now, but I will look that up for future reference for y'all. But team attacks can be anywhere from 2 people to 5 people, because it works off that teamwork button, so important. Which we're just now getting into the tutorial with mention of it. Teamwork does a couple different things. The tutorial is showing us right now how to use teamwork for team acrobatics. Team acrobatics just lets you move further in one movement than you would normally. Most characters, if they're the one performing the teamwork action, can help another character reach about 2 spaces, sometimes 3. But there's also equipment, gear, and skills that will also help with this. So you can see launching black with yellow as the teamwork character got me into range. Same with pink here, where normally I'd be short on the first action. In fact, I've finally unlocked an achievement, because apparently I when I first played this game, because I've played through this fully once at least, I didn't really understand the teamwork button because I kind of accidentally skipped things. Dialogue's a little finicky in this game when it comes to trying to speed it up a little bit with a couple of different clicks. Something the tutorial doesn't really mention, that you can see pretty clearly here, is every character will have 2 actions on their turn. Movement will take up one of them, so because you're usually going to have to move to get into position. But you can spend both actions on movement. To help visually identify that, the movement grid will turn purple because you will be ending your turn with a move. The dialogue is a little bit campy, even in the tutorial, because a lot of this game is about campy, mini puns, mini jokes. And depending on how much you know about Tokusatsu-verse and Power Rangers specifically, you'll get more or less of those jokes. And you saw the little pop-up, which is me trying to get the dialogue to hurry up a little bit on that count. But, yeah, sadly, dialogue is probably one of the few little bits I wish I could tweak in this game in terms of options. And here you can see why it's important to check movement. I thought Pink would have enough movement to get there so we can finish it off with a fantastic triple, and I screwed it up. So instead, I have a free opportunity for another fantastic quadruple, because I'm specifically not using the final attack mechanic. Woo! Because we're going to be introduced to that next with, oh look, a boss that we instantly defeat. This director we're working under is really not really so good. We also get a boss character whose design you don't get to see much of in the game, which is kind of a shame. Really wish it was used in the game, because, or at least as far as the playthrough I did, because it looks like it would be a fairly interesting character. And boss monsters in this game run from complete comic jokes visually to actually legitimately awesome looking, which kind of fits the theme of a Super Sentai show. You get bosses that sometimes are really interesting and unique, and then you have bosses that even if you were living in Japan, you'd probably look at it and go, what the hell were they thinking here? But we're going for the bog standard team finisher here. There are 2 different team finishers in the game. I'm sure it's going to shock no one when I do pull off the other version of the team attack finisher later on. But we even get a fancy little cutscene and everything every time we do a teamwork attack. It's important, guys! A lot of director's instructions are going to include defeat the boss monster with the finishing move, so it's also a pretty big thing. Oh yes, and all boss monsters must either explode or revive with a second life. This is a trope from Super Sentai overall. While our characters discuss why they're currently upset, though, you'll find that throughout the LP, I'm going to constantly refer to the genre as tokusatsu, or as Super Sentai specifically. That's because I personally have worked on a tokusatsu podcast before, and while I am by no means an expert in the genre, I do have a good bit of knowledge picked up from folks who are more of a expert. So I may be bringing some of those guys in, as well as some guys just generally that I know through the LP forums and Something Awful, as co-commentators for future episodes. For now, though, we have a lot of things to cover that are just plot and general mechanics of the game, so I'm probably not going to start bringing people in until maybe the 3rd episode of the LP, or maybe until after we get Season 1 done with, since Season 1 introduces mechanics a little bit at a time. But since this game is also a text-based game, we have a lot of segments like this, which just are a lot of downtime for one person to normally cover once we get all those mechanics discussions done with. So either I'll be bringing in references to the tokusatsu universe, discussing different aspects of the genre during plot-heavy segments like this, or I'll be bantering with a co-commentator possibly about the same, or just how they feel about Chroma Squad and what they've seen so far as well. The biggest reveal about to show up here is the biggest reason why this game legally wound up required to be inspired by Power Rangers as part of the title. And legalistically, you'll be able to pick up a lot of the reasons why very, very quickly. And I'm kind of hedging bets here because little ahead of myself, I suppose. But we also see the Season 1 plots elements starting to be seeded in, namely that director. Oh, it's something in a jar that may or may not be holographic. I wonder what this image invokes. Now the call out with here is probably the only X-Men call out in the entire damn thing. Cerebro being a brain in the jar. The reason it's a call out to X-Men is the Cerebro system enhances the psychic powers of Professor Xavier, the X-Men universe. So, brain-related, has some psychic ability, and is locationally set, because Cerebro wasn't exactly a mobile system. And now we have a Cerebro who is fitting the mentor role, much like a very, very certain thing from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I wonder what that was called. Oh, right. Bandai and Saban both looked at this and said, this is almost purely a direct rip of Zordon from the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers series that was broadcast in America. So they took a look at that and took a look at the various other elements of the game that were released in beta at the time, and their legal team stepped in and said, we like what you're doing, but you can't get away with this without at least putting our name somewhere on here. There's probably a couple of other small things in the legalese I missed, but Meanwhile, we jump straight into customization. Now I cut some of that off because that's just me flipping around actors and such. But our initial setup is Corvus as our lead, Mr. Fahrenheit as our assault, Wangtron by High Wing as our scout, Talo as our assist or support, and Shiny, the Mr. Beaver from Canada, aka Shinarado. These are guys that I just drew from the fail pile, so we'd have an initial setup for the first season of recording. I am going to throw an invite to the entire thread to submit characters with potential backstories, and we'll vote on them toward the end of Season 1. But we also get the strategic level here, which is studio management, where you're using your money and possibly your fans to do different options. There's also a complete list of things that we're going to be able to customize. I thought about customizing them here and now, but I decided to skip and just stay with the defaults, therefore that little fade cut there. Just because I want, again, more thread participation. That's a good way of the thread influencing everything. We also have an equipment system. Right now we're limited to the shop as of the first episode for our different actors, and I will be making a mistake here that isn't that bad a mistake. But I want to take a good look at our skill system in the game. Skills are unlocked with each season, and some characters actually do have a skill choice in Season 1. I tend to keep with the default skills in Season 1 because I find them to be most useful throughout the entirety of the game. Now, there's certainly a case to be said for Find Weakness, but for Season 1, Heal Dukin, which is a range-targeted heal for 50% of their health, is a lot better than free skill regen when you don't have skills to use. It's also nice to see that your initial stuff are literally cardboard and, cheap stuff you got out of Goodwill, and maybe spray painted or colored to your costumes. Here's the mistake I made. You'll notice that there's a ×1 by both the sword and pistol. You start with one pistol on your techie and one sword on your lead, and I bought and equipped to my lead because I wasn't paying attention to things. I was in a hurry to kind of show off some of the different aspects. It won't cost me too much because there is a crafting system that will be introduced in a later episode. And you can see how certain weapons are going to prefer certain stats. Namely, if you're sticking with pistols, you're probably not getting much base attack or weapon attack, but you get range and a little bit of skill regen. If you're going for swords, you're going for weapon damage and attack. So, yeah. Episodes, right now we don't really have a choice, so that's why I want to go ahead and go into episode 1 of season 1. But you can preview different things, and as I show off different episodes later, I'll be taking more advantage of the previews for what your director's instructions are going to be, and show off what information you can get from those. Meanwhile, we're throwing in an origin story as part of episode 1, as well as a boss monster that shows a bit of the charm of the game in a very accurate way. We also have quirky narrative software. The narrative software's quirks are kind of reminiscent of some of the translation errors that were in earlier fan subs of Super Sentai and Metal Hero shows coming from Japan, but also some of the minor quirks and name schemes that were in the early Power Rangers seasons, because of how much footage was actually used from the Japan shows rather than reshooting with the same costumes. The evolution of Super Sentai in America is kind of an interesting topic that we'll probably be poking on later. But I mentioned earlier minions coming from random places, including the changing screen. Makes you wonder how the editing team does in this game. But I did mention earlier the audience bar being super important here. You'll notice the yellow chevron things about, I guess it's about 500 in this particular bar away from empty. That's the level you have to reach in order to power up. This would be the chromatize button. And again, I wind up having movement issues and not quite accounting properly for movement, so I can get a team attack here. I'm by no means perfect at this game, folks. And between that and the desire to try and show off as much as possible this game, and let the thread make as many decisions as possible in this game, I had to hedge my bets a little bit on getting a setup that I am okay with suffering, potentially, depending on certain thread choices. It's a small thing, but it is a thing. And later in the game, there are issues involved with that. One of the other things here is we saw when Talo went to their teamwork pose, the assist character, and only the assist character, is capable of healing any adjacent ally for free as part of the teamwork action. This fits in with their skills rather well and lets them heal pretty much anytime they want, which can be good or bad. One of the other benefits of transforming, and we get a neat little cinematic here that we only get once, I believe, in the entire game. The other benefit of transforming is that you will fully heal. This, in episodes where you need to keep actors above a certain amount of health, this can be really cool and really clutch, rather. In addition, it will also move your entire party to whoever is the active selected character when you transform. Now, if a character's already done their turn, they can never count as active for that. But you're also seeing some of the dodge and counter system, which, yeah, it gets a little annoying, but also is pretty good at the same time. And we get the first skill usage, multi-shot. While it may not deal much damage later in the game based off of just how pistols progress in this game, multi-shot is a very useful skill, and we triggered Gadget Geek, which is the techie's chosen skill for level 1. Which gives them a bit of extra skill regen on skill use. We're also seeing drops. You didn't see them in the tutorial because we didn't have a crafting system yet, and we weren't our own studio. But item drops mean we can craft gear later, which we'll see in a later episode of how that works. And drops can really show how much you're going to have to rely on the shop. Also, a really annoying dodge on a team double attack there. One of our advantages in terms of our actor choices for now, that was given to me by the fail pile for Season 1, is that we have a character who influences item drops and makes them a little bit more common. We'll talk more about the actor bonuses, and specifically as we get to where they're going to be more relevant. But each actor has different stat boosts, so between the actor and their role combination, you can get some really specialized folks. And I'll post the wiki link for all the actors, so that when you, the thread, submit me possible actors for Season 2 and onward, we'll actually have a chance of, or you'll actually have a chance of not only having a visual avatar representation, but if you decide you want to go with specialized route and want to try and vie for a specific role, well, you'll be able to let me know about that in your submissions. Color palette's also pretty varied. As you can see, Failpile went with a Canadian and random setup. We also have a teleport effect now that is basically a ninja smoke bomb, which is kind of cool and kind of shows that, hey, this game has some budget in terms of the in-game studio. But at the same time, we're doing team acrobatics that are basically gymnastics moves and no high-flying wire and springboard stuff that you would see out of an actual Super Sentai show. Even the shows back in like the early 1980s and late 1970s. Oh man. After this little plot segment where really we're kind of just mainly showing off teleportations and how we have a budget, it's a cool effect, but oh look, it wasn't ready for this segment. But we're also going to get an introduction to our episode boss monster, the Boxing Box. Just a big cardboard box with arm and leg holes cut out of it, and boxing gloves. Yeah. That's, when you think about it, you have a really cool image in the Transitmancer, which is the Season 1 kind of theme boss that you'll see throughout. And then you get an actual boss monster that is a boxing box. It's charming, and I guess you blew all your budget on Transitmancer, didn't you, Chroma Squad? This is also a situation where you notice the director's instructions. Defeat the boss monster with a finishing move. As I said, that's kind of a standard thing. And defeat all minions before attacking the boss monster. Here's a hint, I forget about that one. Or rather, I forget how skill usage can still count toward attacking somebody. The scout skill that I've been using, Stunning Pose, I haven't really been using in terms of showing off very well here, because I tend to kill the weak minions pretty much after I use it. But I am throwing in a lot of skill usage here. It's not really necessary against these initial minions, especially once we start gearing up our characters in Season 1. Minions tend to make up for their quantity in terms of, their quality in terms of quantity. A lot of minions show up, which is cool in later episodes, but they tend to go down like chumps, especially these weakest grunts called the Nutcrackers. Now, here's where I sort of screwed up. I used multi-shot, and because of the order of attacks, even if multi-shot had killed both of those minions, because the boss monster was attacked first, it still would fail that director instruction. And when we get to the end of this episode, you'll see it actually does cost me a teeny bit. And I'm getting countered by the boss repeatedly. It's a pain in the ass. In terms of teamwork attacks, you do get very specifically the option of teaming up with weapon attacks, but your weapons have to be off cooldown for that to work. And when you get a critical on the boss, it's a good thing it's a character that doesn't have a phenomenal attack value yet, even though later on, if you're Salt, who gets plus 30% attack as his character roll bonus, you can get phenomenal rates of damage out of an Assault that has counter abilities, which is a stat that gets improved by equipment, and you'll be searching for that regularly. Also, this is why I like Heel Dukin. It's better than using the pistol every turn. Later on, I can see the argument for the extra skill regen from the Season 1 skill, but it's not much of a problem here. Counter as a stat can also run you into some problems, and I'm just wasting turns here by moving around and trying to bolster with team acrobatics for audience levels. But counter, if you get a boss low enough, counter can suddenly bite you in the ass. Because if you kill a boss with a counter attack, that means you didn't kill it with a finishing move, which all too often is a director instruction. And it means you failed to do it via any other means that normally would get you more loot and audience. Shown off here, though, is a team attack that is a team finisher. It doesn't have to be started by the leader. There is no restriction like that. But as you saw the audience bar creep up from finishing with the finishing blow, it didn't go all the way because it didn't get the bonus from the other director instruction. This is going to be costly in later missions, specifically. But right now, that's not too big of a worry. But hey, we finished the episode, now we're going to get the results screens. Audience matters. You want that bar full as much as possible, and it determines what you'll get in terms of money and fans, which are your long-term resource. You also get a summary of what dropped, so if you missed a drop, you'll get a C here. You also get some commentary, as well as a forced save. That'll bring this episode of Chroma Squad to its conclusion. I do invite you to come back. In terms of what we have going on for the future, I hope to get out another episode at least once a week, but I do want some thread participation. Not only can you submit your own character choices based off of the actors list from the wiki, a little bit of backstory if you want to include it. We're going to take those until the finale episode, at which point we'll open up for a thread vote on which characters we run from Season 2 throughout the rest of the game, because the fail pile are just stand-ins for them, as it were. In addition, I'll be taking thread submissions for literally any of the customizable elements in this game, from activation phrases for the mecha and the transformation sequences to the name of our studio. Anything we saw pretty much from that first list, and I'll repost that list in the thread later as well. But thank you for joining me. Hopefully you'll have enjoyed this, but feel free to add in any comments, concerns, or ideas for future episode topics for Downtime and Plot. Thank you again for joining me. I've been the Ronin of Dreams. Enjoy your day.